Hi, this is video 2 in a series of how to market to students for study abroad. And I want to share something that I learned in 2009 from the Associate Dean of Arts and Sciences, Jerry O'Callahan, about students who study abroad and why they do it. I had been invited by Jerry to give a presentation to students on how to win national scholarships. So after the program was done on the evening that was set, we went out to dinner, and two of his study abroad colleagues also joined us, and he was telling us about his work for Scholars Day. And he had set up a panel of 5 students that were going to present on their experiences abroad. And he had one basic thesis or question that he wanted answered. And I don't know if he told the students or not, but he wanted to know, were students different before they studied abroad, or were they different because they studied abroad? Were they different after? And was that the driving reason that they were able to do it? So on the day of Scholars Day, I showed up and sat in the back. I came a little late, and the room was completely packed. And the 5 students gave wonderful presentations on their study abroad experience. I think one student went to Africa, one went to Spain, so there was a very good mix of different experiences there. And it was highly effective for the students there and also the faculty and the community members that took part. But the thing that was really interesting, that really caught my eye, was when Jerry asked them, what were the impediments, what were the problems and the roadblocks you ran into that made it difficult to study abroad? What were the obstacles? And the first was obvious, which was money. And I knew that firsthand because that's what I went through. Was the biggest fear was, how am I going to fund this? How am I going to pay for this trip? And so that wasn't shocking, but there were 2 others that were a little more surprising to me. And the second one was, what's my family going to think? What's my family going to say when I say I want to go to Africa for a semester? Which, that makes sense. There's always the fear there, there's always the what ifs, and dealing with parents, they most of the time for students are their investors in these trips and are putting their money into it. So their concerns are absolutely 100% valid, not to mention that, hey, they're the parents of the child. So, but again, at the same time, this is an adult child. That needs to be remembered. And the last one actually shocked me. The answer that the 3 students gave, or the 5 students gave, was, what are my friends going to say? I didn't even think of that one. It didn't even cross my mind to think that people would sit there and say, what are my friends going to think when I say I want to go for a semester? But it made sense. It made sense that the communities that they were living in, the pockets of students that they associated with, their opinions for what they were going to be doing for the entire semester would matter, because that was their living arrangement. That was who they were around and probably spent the majority of their college time. So disconnecting from that group and going out for a semester abroad was a legitimate concern. So what's the response? As far as the money for the first one, how do you find the money? That comes down to advising. Usually the students who do the best are the ones that have a year to plan. The ones that come in 10 minutes before they want to go, usually let's say 10 days, have to do everything really quickly. They don't have time to look at the scholarships and everything that's out there and plan to be the type of candidate that they're looking for to win the money. But the students who have an entire year, who can sit there and say, okay, I need to do this, 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 and this, and they really define what they want to do and define where they're going, and then start looking and following the money, if that's a concern, they can find it. It's out there. It just takes planning. The response to what family is going to say and what parents are going to say, that's usually between the student and the parent, whether this deal is going to go through, whether the parents are going to put their investment of money and take the risk and say, okay, I'm going to let you go. A lot of parents are great. I can't tell you how many students come in and say, my parents studied abroad here, my parents studied abroad there. I usually ask that in advisement of why do you want to study abroad, or who do you know that's done it before? And there's always someone. There's always and if it's the parents, they're the simplest students, because it's already a preconceived notion that they're going to go, and there's not going to be roadblocks there. The last one is the friends. And we can't change friends' minds, and we don't want to. Actually, changing people's minds is probably a bad idea. I would suggest that instead of doing that, we need to break into those communities where students already want to do it but may not know how. Where their friends already look at that and say, man, that's amazing. I want to go to Africa. I want to go to China. I want to sit here and go to somewhere in South America or even Canada. It's those groups that have already decided that, hey, I want to do this, that we need to be marketing, and that goes right back to what Jerry found. was that students are different before they go. Students come preloaded with the idea that I want to travel, I want to do this. And from a marketing standpoint, that makes sense. If you think of KitchenAid mixers, me personally, I have no reason to buy a KitchenAid mixer. If I'm going to eat bread, it's going to come from the store because I'm not going to take the time to make it. If I do take the time to make it, it's going to come out of a box, and I don't really need a KitchenAid for that. I can usually just use a spatula. I don't like to bake enough to use a KitchenAid mixer. Classic cars are the same way. I think they're cool, but I'd never want to work on them. I'd never want to do all the maintenance and the shining and the waxing. I just need to get from point A to point B. Now an altimeter, on the other hand, one of the big huge ones that goes on your wrist that's about 5 times the size of a wristwatch that's gaudy, I'm interested in one of those because I like to skydive. So that's useful to me. I want to know where 5,500 feet is so I can pull the ripcord. I don't want to get to 3,000 feet and say, now I need to pull, because it's something I'm already interested in. A crazy GPS calculator for my bike so that I know how fast I'm going down a hill, or I know what the altitude is, or I know what the grade of the climb is, for $300 is interesting to me. That I need because I can use it. Study abroad's the same way. It's the students who already want to do it, who can already use the service that we have, who want to connect with us and say, this is something I associate with, will do it. To try to get somebody who wants to make bread and who loves to cook to buy an altimeter, it's not going to happen because they don't need it. It's not something they look at and say, this is a part of what I want. So when we look at marketing for study abroad, we don't need the whole campus. We don't have to market to everyone. That may sound crazy, but we need the people who already want to do it. We need the people we know are going to go. The simple people like international studies majors, history majors. The ICC is one of the big untapped resources of places we can focus quickly and find students the fastest. Yes, there's no students for geography and some of these other majors that we haven't had success with. It doesn't mean there's students there that don't want to. It just means at this point they're not thinking, and further down the road, yeah, let's go campus-wide. But with our resources now, we need to focus on the places where students already want to go and focus on those 3 questions. Here's the money. This is what you need to talk about with your parents, and that's largely them, and saying, hey, your friends are already on board with what you're doing. They're already looking at you going, wow, a semester in Costa Rica, that's amazing, as opposed to giving a resistance and saying, why would you want to do that? So I say find the people on campus who want to do it, and then just talk to them. That's going to be the most effective way to get students' attention and get people to go on our programs. Thank you.